Well, good morning and welcome, my friends. Yes, another edition of Flipside Live coming your way on this Wednesday morning, a little after 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Robbie Noel broadcasting live from Rosarito Beach, Mexico. Today, greatly anticipated by many on Wall Street, because we get the minutes of the last FOMC meeting, but we also get the proverbial interview questions and answers that follows the announcement of the FOMC minutes, and the media will have an opportunity, if they so desire, to question Janet Yellen about the future actions that are going to be taken by the U.S. Federal Reserve. Nobody really expects her to make any bombshell announcements. In anticipation of her speech, the Dow is marginally higher this morning, as is NASDAQ. Gold is off $14, but that's just simply more of a reflection of the fear trade over the events in the Ukraine, somewhat benign, and therefore the risk trade is coming off on this Wednesday. But we live in a world where everything could change in 24 hours. Interesting to note, a contributing editor to Casey Research, Doug French, has an article today where he explains why gold is unstoppable. I won't spend too much time on the announcement yesterday that another JPM broker committed suicide. I do find it rather interesting that the day after the announcement of the suicide, JPM this morning announced it was selling its commodity division. There's something going on. What it is exactly, I haven't put my finger on it, but I will practice as much due diligence as I can in order to answer some of those mysterious questions, almost as mysterious as the disappearance of the Malaysian airline. As Doug French says today on why gold is unstoppable, stars of stage, screen, and boardroom have come together to ban Bossy. The world has lots of problems, and Sheryl Sandberg and Beyonce think the word bossy tops the list. Reportedly, assertive girls are called the B word growing up, dissuading them from pursuing leadership roles. At least that's what Condoleezza Rice and Diana von Furstenberg claim. Rest assured, these women don't want bossy attitudes to go away. They want it called something else. Jay-Z's wife offers an alternative. I'm not bossy, I'm the boss, which sounds a little bossy to me. No one knows whether the new head of the Federal Reserve, Janet Yellen, was called bossy when growing up. For sure, she is no wallflower these days. 4 years ago, as president of the San Francisco Federal Reserve Bank, she said, accommodative policy is appropriate in my view because the economy is operating well below its potential and inflation is undesirably low. If it were possible to take interest rates into negative territory, I would be voting for that. Well, now that she is the boss, Yellen might ban interest rates. As a believer in the musings of John Maynard Keynes, Chairwoman Yellen no doubt insists that people are too future-orientated. Remember, in the long run, we are all dead. Society doesn't consume enough, saves too much, interest rates are too high, money printing will lower rates, and unused savings lead to unemployment. The last 3 Fed bosses have wanted to, if not do away with interest rates, at least ground them to nothing. What's inescapable, however, is money today is worth more than money tomorrow. That means interest rates provide important signals to the marketplace. Left to the markets, these rates will reflect society's time preference. How much must savers be paid to delay consumption? In turn, interest rates will direct capital towards its optimum use. The Fed can ban interest by forcing the rates it controls to zeros. But the Eccles building bosses cannot dictate the results. Janet Yellen can't print jobs or force Amazon to increase prices. The newly minted money will flow where it must go, and it almost always gushes into the speculation du jour. Gold has always been its own boss. The cost to create an ounce is somewhere around the going price of $13.66. This fact will keep too much gold from being mined. The sort of economic brick wall doesn't prevent Yellen and company from creating more dollars. Using Fed credit to buy treasuries costs nothing, while the cost of making a new high-tech C-note is 60% higher than the old paper. The government can still make $100 bills backed by legal tender laws for only 12.5 cents. It's good for the boss, it's bad for the rest of us. Henry Bonner recently had a chat with John Embry, and asked him the important question of why gold is unstoppable. As Embry said to Henry, talking about the current gold market, he says, well, there's been a move up here. Gold and silver are doing well against resistance and against sentiment, which still remains very negative. So many people are still very bearish on the metals for reasons that I can't understand, but the bearishness exists. I also think that there's an ongoing interference in the markets. One thing is that they don't want gold and silver breaking out and running hard. I think they've done a good job at that because gold's up $150 from the low that was established at the end of last year. It got down to 1180 briefly, and even silver against great resistance is pushing forward. Yet most commentators remain negative or worse on this subject, and it shows that there's still work to be done. Henry then asked John what he thinks investors in gold and silver should be looking at right now. John's response is, well, I'm looking at the reality of the big picture. First of all, the world economies are not what they are made out to be. Without exception, pretty much they are weakening and they are struggling. It's very simple. There's far too much debt in the world, in virtually every country and at every level. And if you believe in the tenets of Austrian economics to the extent that I do, when you get an excess debt situation in the world, you cannot create enough new debt to get the economy to grow. I think that's basically what we are up against. Consequently, I don't see the economy bailing out the bulls at this point. As things get worse and worse in the economy, I think gold and silver will become a worthwhile alternative. What goes unremarked is how small these markets really are. If you looked at every ounce of gold that's been mined since the beginning of time, that's only 170,000 metric tons, more or less. That's only worth a little over $7 trillion. And $1 trillion doesn't go very far these days. So you think about how little gold there is. And silver is a fraction of that. If money decides they want an outlet in these two metals, it's going to have an outside impact on the price. I think as things get more and more difficult in the real world, people will seek outlets in gold and silver, and the impact will be outsized. Henry then asks John Embry about the recent stories about gold manipulation being published in all the major financial publications. And he says, what about this Baffin situation, the German equivalent of the SEC? After investigating Deutsche Bank, which is involved in the London price fix for gold, they announced that gold may be manipulated worse than LIBOR. Are we on the cusp of a great revelation about price fixing? John said, I think it's interesting that they are focusing on the London price fixing. I'm sure that there's probably been some chicanery there, but it's absolutely minuscule compared to what's going on in the gold market between the Western central banks and the bullion banks and the amount of pressure they brought on the gold price. The thing is, I'd be more interested in the extent to which gold and silver prices have been held back by the relentless central bank activity, but you've got to start somewhere, and the Baffin inquiry is a positive step in the right direction. They go on chatting for a while longer about the evidence that's piling up beyond all reasonable doubt that not only the gold and silver markets, but by and large all markets are manipulated. The difference between gold and silver and LIBOR and currency rates is quite simply there is only so much gold and silver available above ground. The lack of physical gold and silver, I think, is the real Achilles heel of the paper market. There's overwhelming physical demand from China and other sources in Asia for physical gold. Recognition of the lack of physical, especially to back all of the paper products, could really push the price of gold and silver substantially higher in a very short frame of time. And so Henry concludes his chat with John Embry by saying, what do you think the response of the Federal Reserve will be? John Embry's response, I think they have already made their response. They have printed all this money, and I think that a lot of U.S. officially held gold has entered the market through lease swaps or whatever. I think they have less and less firepower to maintain this sort of activity. As a result, when it changes, it will change dramatically because there will be more demand than there is physical supply to meet that demand. And the paper market, which has controlled the pricing mechanism for as long as I can remember, will finally be overrun. Well, that concludes this early morning edition of the Flipside. I encourage you to tune over to the micro effect for the balance of the day shows coming up in half an hour. Life, Liberty, and all that jazz with Jeffrey Bennett. followed by Roger Stokes, Jack Blood, Roger Sales reporting from Argentina, and round out the day at 4 p.m. Pacific time with yours truly on the afternoon edition of the Flipside. So till then, my friends, see you back.